Well, welcome back. I know for many of you that was probably a bit of a whiplash effect. We were right in the middle of a sentence that got cut off, and some of you experienced that as well. But I take that as a sign as well that continues to be good conversation and interest in what we're talking about. Last time, we don't have a lot of time to debrief fully. But again, one idea or so from each group. It doesn't have to be the sexiest or the most exciting idea. Maybe it's just the last one you heard or one on your notepad that you can still read and make out. But let me hear from each group. And I'll start with funding. We here at the end, we were talking about how the goal of this project is that the web interface would be entirely bilingual. We've tried to do that from the beginning so that you could work at it entirely in Chinese or in English. And so the question was raised, if it's really for English speakers and Chinese speakers, should the funding come equally from China, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, that part of the world, as well as United States in European countries. So something to worth consider and explore further. Eugenio, do you have some comments from your group? And please remind us what your group was. Eugenio, you're still muted.
We were in the group partnerships, and we had several who joined who were representatives of institutions, the Monumenta Serica Institute, Renmin University Institute of Qing History. There were also some Seventh Adventist teaching in Seventh Adventist College, Union College, who would like also to collaborate and maybe bring in their archives and so on. We had the Accademia Cattolica from Fureng University and so on. And one of the major topics that we discussed was how to leverage our presence in the classroom for data input. And we talked about the digital indipete database at Boston College, which is a project to enter the letters that the Jesuits would write to their general to ask to be sent to the missions. This project is already online and you can visit it if you wish. And the representative of the project, Elisa Fry, said that they have hundreds of students in Italian high schools and universities who are actually transcribing materials. And then these materials are being checked by other academics and they are put on the database. And we have done this at Boston University. Others, like the Seventh Adventist teachers, suggested that they could do that work with their undergraduate students. And so having both resources to maybe compensate this, or at least establish internships that will give skills to these students, would be a good way to create partnerships that combine institutions with real work on the database.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. Steve.
Yeah, so we were in the group dealing with gatekeepers and sources, and initially we talked about different source bases we could look at, and there were some really great suggestions about sources that we may forget about, like in Scandinavia, for instance, or maybe some kind of local archives or archives that you don't have information about online, but you may be able to find in Italy or Spain. Also in Taiwan, like Fudan University could be a great group or institution to interact with. It was really a wonderful discussion. We also talked about some concerns and issues. One that came up at the end is getting permission from different institutions and archives, and that can be pretty difficult sometimes. If maybe you have to write a letter to them even, and send it through snail mail, and also attribution in the database. So if somebody uses the database for their own research, how do we ensure that they're giving attribution to the original holders of the sources that they're using? Is there some way that we can compel that so that the people we work with, the institutions we work with are getting credit.
Excellent. Wow. Another good conversation. Thank you for moderating that. Alex, what did you hear in your group?
Yeah, we kind of had a wide-ranging discussion, but I think there were some really good takeaways for me, thinking about the more technical side of the project and how we actually, accomplish these technical large-scale goals we have. One of them offered by Peter Boll was the necessity of project managers, of people who kind of are these go-betweens between the highly technical skilled side of the project and the historically minded side, academic side of the project. And these positions, for large scale projects to work, really do need good funding. But also another big important takeaway from the project was the utility of APIs and integrating data sets together and helping kind of data sets grow through integration. And I think this is something that I think as we get into the developing the technical side of the project more, exploring the ability to integrate APIs would be a really important thing for the project. And just it's again helping all projects get richer as we grow. So.
Wonderful. We've got a lot to take away. This is great. Yen Rong.
Hello. In our group with workflow, actually, we don't have a big group, only Mark Meir and I, only two were there. I think we're the smallest group. But that's a good, we had a more deep conversations and on details of challenge and the experience of building a database, as Mark is one of the experienced person behind the database, not just as users. So there's some very important takeaways for example, like cross sources, how to use data that is already available and even cleaned in the hands of researchers or something on Wikipedia portal. How can we collaborate to get those data? And the second major topic we went through is organizing a team, because for digital projects, so that we have already realized that it's a costly thing in terms of manpower or everything other sources. So Mark and I talked about the roles of people who put for data input, and then you need advisor or reviewer to check those data. Sometimes, as Mark said, it takes more time to correct the mistakes in the data input than you put it yourself. Sometimes which is true, and we need technical support like architect, and also very importantly, but I think we have never talked about it, we need the role of researcher in this team, not just to put correct data, but also you need to research to put like latitude or longitude of which place in which province and specific location, the location ID, and how to connect to them. So this role, I think, is something that we haven't talked much about. Then in terms of this, just one thing, but very important, like when we are talking about the database as to build it as a top-down approach, maybe it's hard to get, it leads to nowhere. But if we can take a bottom-up approach, we start with the researchers' individual projects. There are some very successful examples there already. So maybe then we have already cleaned the data and structured data, and they know what they're doing, and gradually we can build it up, accumulate, and collaborate. So this is the end of my reporting.
That's fantastic. It's great. Thank you. Very useful. Wenlu, what about your group?
Yeah, we are very grateful to have a rather large number of participants in our session, and we have several BU students who has already been in the team to help with data input. So I want to start with this point. And I think that the most often raised issue from our current supporters, are about geographical locations and multi-language issue. So what they're struggling the most is because working with the Christianity, with history of, archives, no matter it's archive, no matter it's whether it's primary sources or secondary sources, it was written in multiple languages, written in French and German and Latin, and so it's very hard for them. They struggle a lot to try to just identify the spellings. And another aspect to mention is that some of the locations were actually transliterated by the missionaries using local tongues, like native tongues, like Tibetan. It could be like I don't know, someone raised like Tibetan, and dialect, like Min dialect and Hakka dialect, and they probably don't know how to, even if they pronounce it, they probably don't know what the characters refers to, what location it refers to. So I'm wondering if in the future the database can provide such kind of just I don't know, help, like mechanisms, how to connect the locations names, or like a way of spelling in multiple languages. I think that would be helpful. Another aspect I want to mention is something similar to Yanrong just said, that a bottom-up approach, because we have several PhD candidates in our group as well who are working on their individual project, and they were actually wondering if it's possible to have a more open interface that they can actually use the database to build a small database with their own raw data, within this large database. And so they can contribute the data to the database, and they can also, but they can enjoy the infrastructure, the bigger house is providing for them. So that's from me, I guess. And we had a very grateful discussion in our session.
Wonderful. Thanks for that update. Joe, what did you hear in your group?
Yeah, so I had a really good conversation with Christoph Zimmer at the University of Göttingen in Germany. And where our talk was basically about how students are often overwhelmed by the kinds of demands and resources that they have, but we need to kind of allow them to learn digital media literacy and digital media tools. So perhaps using the database and constructing it in a way that is easy for them to access openly, and then for them to build an understanding that they can always come back to this database in the future for other assignments, other term papers, and becoming a kind of go-to resource for them in a kind of long-term scale. And also a lot of students are already well-versed in using Google Scholar or Google in general. So borrowing from Google, like maps, visualizations, allowing them to kind of bridge the gap between just straightforward Googling and then the kind of deeper specialized databases that a lot of scholars use, and drumming up interest that way. I think another thing that came up was I asked the question, if you were an evangelist for the CHCD, how would you promote this to instructors? How would you promote this to people who may or may not be interested? And Christoph talked about the idea of instructors are always very busy. We're always asked to do 100 things at once. And how can we leverage the user-friendly nature of the database to save time, to be able to create shortcuts, and also to present the content in a way that is both efficient and also appealing to wider audiences through user-friendly data kind of construction, as well as even looking at the different ways that this is a truly transnational project, not just missionaries going to China, but Chinese ideas flowing back to Europe and other parts of the world, and connecting the world in a kind of global manner. So thinking broadly about the content as well as the user interface in a way that is friendly for students to use.
Wonderful. Wow. Thanks, Joe, for that update and the work that the two of you did together. Fred.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I was the moderator of the Global China group. We had a big group of converts to the importance of the global nature and experiences of people, but also texts, books, money, food, and commodities. I think as we went around the room, it became clear that we wanted to try and balance both an appreciation for the global aspect of things, and China as well. And we also emphasized, as Joe just mentioned, that it's a two-way street. There's an importance of a connection between China and the Philippines and Japan, but there are also overland networks that remained important and that are still important. So we sort of wanted to focus not just on European missionaries, but also on Chinese ideas and Chinese Christians traveling to different places. So we had a very rich global discussion about this topic. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks for all the input that went into that group. We'll have a lot to chew on from that, I'm sure. Chris, what did you hear?
Yeah, so our group talked about visual culture and oral history. Much of the discussion focused more on the visual culture, and the consensus was the more photos and more visual things that are available on the web page, the better. This is what a lot of the public are more interested in. Maybe not as much the scholars, but the public side are. And so by including old photos, that would make it more appealing to them. But even more things like if there are video or audio clips from the past that could be included. And there was a recent project by a professor at the University of Tennessee, Megan Bryson, did something with one of her classes where they had access to old videos of different religious services in China from the early 1900s. And students had to write an essay about them. And not all of them were Christian, but things like that. There are some videos of, a 5-minute clip, a 2-minute clip, and Joseph Ho would probably be much more familiar with this stuff than most of us. But to somehow find a way to have those accessible on the website, you click a link and there it is, that would be appealing. Related to this is when there is collection of local sources, have it not just be textual sources. So even today, if graduate students are going to a village and to get information about a church, of course, take pictures of the church, take videos of the church, interview one of the leaders or a village elder and record that. And so maybe there's a chance that a 30-second clip of an elder in a local village in Shanxi can be accessible on the website. All of that makes it more real and tangible for the public. That may not always be as valuable to scholars, although obviously, of course, it could be valuable to scholars too, but to make it more appealing to the public, the more photos and the more of this audio visual resources available, the better it is.
Wow. Great. Wonderful. Well, I appreciate all of the input that you've been able to share. And I mean, I know we've touched the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to unpack. And we'll be working on a team at doing just that over the coming weeks. Again, I invite you, if you have other comments, suggestions, pointers, things we should look at, please reach out by email or in some other way, get in contact with us, because we really are going to be moving into a strategizing time and value your input. As we come to the end of our time, I want to pay special tribute to our 5 rapporteurs, whom you've just heard from. They've worked very hard these last 3 days to capture what's been said and the main ideas of this entire workshop. So Wenlu Wang, Joseph Ho, Stephen Pieragostini, Project Formota, and Yenrong Chen. Your close attention to the proceedings helped harness all the great ideas and energy from this workshop and made this time useful going forward. We are all indebted to you. And we're also deeply grateful for everyone who's in attendance today. In every off-screen meeting I think I've had this week, I think someone has always mentioned the energy in the so-called room, whatever you want to define that, which I admit is rather shocking. I have become, I guess, too accustomed to lifeless and soulless Zoom meetings. So how you all manage to convey energy is still somewhat baffling to me, but I am so grateful for it. Thank you for making this meeting a success. And finally, I want to let you know that all the Zoom session videos will be posted online shortly. and we will notify every registrant when they are publicly available. So if you had to sacrifice hearing someone because you had to teach a class or you were in the other parallel session, you will now be able to go back and hear what was said. And I hope you enjoy that. I know I've enjoyed every part that I've been in and look forward to sort of completing my experience. So on behalf of the CHCD leadership, Eugenio Minagon, Liu Xian, and Alex Mayfield, I thank you all for joining us this week. You've given us new momentum as we enter the next development of the China Historical Christian Database, and we are grateful for that. I hope you have a wonderful day or a wonderful night. Goodbye.
Can we
Thank
stay for
you.
just 1 second since we have a few minutes for those who wish, Daryl?
Sure.
So there are some messages coming in right now. People are asking about access to the beta. Maybe, Daryl, you want to say something about that?
I mean, so my point at this stage is I would love to maybe know more. What's in the beta is largely just enough for us to create the video you saw. It was a way to be able to go and say, this is the conceptual idea that we have designed. So if you're trying to go into it and really track down, oh, do you have this person that I'm interested, that I know was in Shanxi? Maybe, maybe not. There's a lot, it's very partial data, so you can't draw any conclusions from it. If you want to just get a feel for it, possibly, like, what's the idea behind this? So, you know, if you're wanting to go into it and say, well, this scholarly tool is no use, because you'll quickly feel like this is no use to you because of the gaps in it. But if it's to get a feel for how does it operate, how does it run, there may be a possibility.
Maybe Alex, do you want to pitch in on this since you created it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, right now it's in a period, I think we called it closed beta, which is a typical kind of a developmental process timeline, right? A state you can be in. For the reasons that Daryl has just mentioned, that, you know, we don't want people to draw scholarly conclusions from it yet. It's really a proof of concept. But I think everyone's bringing up some really good points about, you know, it's hard to offer clear comments if we can't kind of interact with what this online platform. So I think probably what we can do, and maybe we need to discuss as a team, but if you're interested in wanting just to toy around with it, to see what is this, what possibilities could it offer, I think just contact us. And if you've already mentioned it in the chat, we can put you on a list for that. And so that way, you know, here's access to it, play around with it, and send us feedback. That's the point of this closed beta, because I know a few people have already been playing around with it and have some thoughts as well. So if you're interested, I would say email us. Is that all right, Daryl?
Yeah.
Okay, and we will work to have to expand access to it.
So Professor Ball would like to say something, please.
So Daryl and Alex and Eugenio, I want to encourage you to take that a step further and just say, we'll label this as beta, label this as proof of concept, say this is what we started to do, this is ongoing, and then create a link to a Google form where people can make suggestions. And
that's great.
That's a really good idea.
And
really good.
You know, I worked for a number of years with Bill Skinner, who had a tendency to sit on his data, not share, because he wanted to get it just right. And one danger in that is that you lose momentum. The moment when everybody is paying attention is to keep them engaged, even if they're there and they're saying, this is no good, you got to do better than this. It doesn't matter, right? You want people to be engaged. And so I think we're all better off with that, and say you're doing this because you want people to comment on a beta version, which is very much in process, and make it possible, really easy for them to comment. Not having to write you an email, some form they can just link to right away and put them in, their name in, or not, depending, suggest new things, right?
That's great.
I encourage you, openness, transparency, Doug, all the things we talk about in academia.
That's great.
Are there, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a really good suggestion, and to the team, I think we could definitely put something like that into place. So
Great.
you have to give me a little time to code it. I have a newborn at home, so it might take me a second to wrap my head around the code, but it's not too hard.
Any other general comments from someone else? You know, Peter Ball is the father of China DH to an extent. He's an evangelist, and we are happy to have him today. Anybody else who would like to make general comments? Well, I guess it's Saturday for everybody, so it's time to go. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. It has been wonderful. We learned a lot.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Eugenio, Daryl, great job. Really good.